Good afternoon and welcome to Making Yogurt, or Yogurt Making rather, I believe is the way that it was listed. My name is Kristen Davis and I am the Family and Consumer Sciences Agent here at the Mecklenburg County Cooperative Extension. I am a part of the North Carolina State University Field Faculty, and we are very pleased to be providing this training for you today. This is one of our first online hands-on step-by-step trainings. So I appreciate your patience if you'll bear with me as we're kind of figuring out what will work well. In the past, as a part of the Sustainable Living series, we have offered all of our courses, our hands-on classes, here in the Mecklenburg Cooperative Extension Nutrition Lab, which is where I am currently. We've offered them actually at the office, but we are testing to see if we can broaden our reach by offering online classes as a part of our Sustainable Living series. So part of my responsibility is to teach citizens about the food system and also food literacy. And some of that includes cooking classes, canning classes, learning how to prepare quick and healthy meals. We have a number of different offerings that we provide. So today we're going to be focusing on yogurt making. And if you'll give me just a brief second, I am going to share my screen now so that we can get into the presentation. Alrighty. All right, so let's go back here. So today we're going to be talking about the basics of making yogurt. This is a very easy process. It's something that can be a cost saver for you and your family, as well as a very healthy addition to not only your diet, but to a number of recipes as well. So let's first talk about a few facts about yogurt. Yogurt, which has a number of different spellings, is a semi-solid fermented milk product that originated many centuries ago and has kind of evolved over time through traditional European products. The word is from the Turkish yogen, meaning thick. And what we know about yogurt is that the partial digestion of the milk that happens during the fermentation process actually makes a yogurt a bit more easy to digest, even for people who may have lactose intolerance or may have difficulty with digesting dairy. You can also use yogurt in different products to baking, some of your baking recipes to produce a tender product. It will help to moisten the product, and also you get that addition of protein because yogurt is a rich source of protein, calcium, and that fermentation process also makes these ingredients easier to absorb. Now, here's a few tips for safe and successful yogurt making. You want to make sure that you're using clean and sanitized products. So you want your containers and your utensils to be clean and sanitized. One easy way to sanitize containers and equipment is just to boil those items in water for 10 minutes. The boiling process will kill most pathogens that may cause a risk during the process. You also want to make sure that you sanitize your workspace. You can do so by using a sanitizing solution, which is about a tablespoon of chlorine bleach to about a gallon of water. You can mix that in a large container, and then you can pour it into spray bottles and have them on hand. You want to spray your workspace and then allow that space to dry. You don't want to wipe the sanitizing solution away. You want to allow that to air dry. Another thing to keep in mind is that you want to maintain a temperature of between 98 degrees Fahrenheit and 120 degrees Fahrenheit during incubation. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but kind of your target temperature that you want to try to maintain is really about around 110 to 120. And we're going to be using the oven method today. And I will demonstrate for you what that looks like and what that includes. You also want to make sure that you protect your starter from contamination. So your starter is considered, in this case, is going to be our plain yogurt with active bacteria. And so you want to make sure that you keep that item closed before using. And then if you save a starter, which we're going to talk about today as well, you want to make sure that you keep that covered and keep it refrigerated so that you reduce contamination. Now, let's talk about some of the items that we can use to actually make yogurt. There are different types of milk and dairy products that you can use as the base for your yogurt. Of course, you can use milk from various animals. That includes cow milk, goat's milk, and sheep's milk. You can use cream, whole, low-fat, skim, non-fat, or dehydrated dry milk can be used as well. Or you can also use a milk and then use milk solids, something like a non-fat dry milk powder, to thicken your product as well, to help to thicken the yogurt. There are also a number of different starter cultures that you can use. Lactobacillus is one of the more common ones that you're going to see in a lot of yogurts. And I'm pretty sure that both of these are present in the yogurt that we're using today. You can also use Streptococcus thermophilus as well as a starter culture. Now, you can use a dry culture that you can purchase from a health food store or that you can purchase on the internet. I certainly would caution you to be very careful when purchasing on the internet, because sometimes that can be a bit risky and that it can be hard to validate the product. However, if you're purchasing from your health food stores, perhaps like your Whole Foods, or if you're here in Charlotte, the Healthy Home Market, you can actually have the staff there to help to kind of advise you and give you some feedback on the product that you're purchasing. Or the simplest way is that you can just use a plain yogurt. Now, that plain yogurt needs to have live and active cultures. And this is just any general plain yogurt that you just purchased from your local grocery store. You want to make sure that you check the label to see that the product actually includes live cultures. And I'm going to show you an example today. Now, when you're preparing for your next batch, you can maintain a culture, which means that after you've created yogurt, you can save a small portion of that yogurt as a starter for your next batch. So this is one of the reasons why yogurt is really a cost saver. Making your own yogurt can reduce cost, because technically you could purchase one small container of yogurt, and if you're able to maintain those live cultures, you can continue to make batches of yogurt by saving a starter. Now, we recommend about 1 cup for 1 gallon batch, and then about 1/4 of a cup for a 1 quart batch. Now, you want to make sure you're keeping, as we talked about before, this starter in an airtight container, stored in a refrigerator, and sealed until you're ready to use it. Now, one of the questions that I receive is, well, if I'm making plain yogurt, how might I use that, or what are some additives that I can add to it? Well, sweeteners such as sugar, honey, or artificial sweeteners can be used in yogurt. You can use fruit or other flavorings, and you can also use gelatin for thickening. There are recipes that will recommend that you add the sugar or honey or the sweetener during the incubation process. However, one of the safest recommendations is just to add whatever it is that you want to use to sweeten the yogurt or to give it flavor after it's already been produced. All right, so let's get into today's recipe. Today, the ingredients that we're using 12 ounces of whole milk. We're using 1/4 of a cup of plain yogurt. In this case, we're using Greek yogurt. It doesn't matter if you use regular yogurt or Greek, as long as it has those live active cultures. You're also going to need a small saucepan, measuring cups, a pint canning jars, and then you also want to just have, I didn't include this here on the screen, but you want to have an ice bath on hand. I'll show you what that looks like. And then you also want to maybe have just a couple of glass bowls on hand. Now, you want to use non-reactive cookware and products, so glass is highly recommended. If you're incubating your product and you're not going to do it in the oven, then you can also use plastic containers that are food safe containers. Now, today we are going to be using the oven method, where we start the milk on the stove and cool it, and then we incubate it in the oven. But there are different processes that you can use, and I am going to follow up this session with an email to you with a great handout that tells you different ways that you can incubate your yogurt. But I'll talk you through some of them. One, you can use a yogurt maker. There are yogurt makers available in the market that you can purchase, and you can use those that help you to incubate those live cultures at a particular temperature. You can also use your oven, setting your oven to about 110. Of course, this will require you to have an oven thermometer, so you have have a way of knowing the actual temperature that you're maintaining. And then also, you can use an insulated cooler. You can pre-warm that cooler with almost boiling water, empty it, and then fill it with water that's 110 degrees that comes halfway up to your jars, and close it and incubate it that way. Or you can use a thermos as well to incubate your active cultures. So I am going to pause for just a second, and I'm going to switch my camera over so that you're able to see the actual workspace. Alrighty, so I'm hoping that you're able to hear me okay. And so you won't be able to see my face on the screen, but you will be able to see me kind of walk through the recipe. Now, the very first thing that you need to do is you need to warm your milk. One of the ways that's often recommended is to bring your whole milk to a boil. And then after you bring your whole milk to a boil, you want to allow that to cool to room temperature. So for instance, we're using a thermometer here to read the temperature of our milk. We brought this milk to a boil. I did this prior to the presentation. I brought the milk to a boil on the stove in a small saucepan, and then I removed it from the heat and allowed it to cool to about between about 110 and 120. So right now we're reading at about 120. Now, another option that you can use if your milk is too warm and you want to cool it is that you can use an ice bath. And so what we have here is we have just a glass container with ice and water. And then if we needed to cool our yogurt, I'm not going to leave it there very much now because it's at the right temperature, we could place our yogurt into the ice bath and begin to cool it down. So that's one option that you can use. All righty. Now, I want to point out for you, I'm going to take off my noisy gloves. I want to point out for you that today we are using just a regular Harris Teeter brand Greek yogurt. I think I purchased this for probably about 89 cents. And I want to show you here. I'll see if I can zoom in. Let's see here. I want to show you here on the screen. Let's see if we can get close enough. Let's see if it'll adjust. Okay. Maybe not. Let me try a different camera. All right. So you'll see here in your ingredients list, I'm gonna hold just so it can adjust. You'll see here at the bottom, it says acidophilus, bifidus. It says there are 5 different active cultures that are available here in this yogurt. So this is a really great example of a starter. As I said, very inexpensive, small container. A small container goes a long way because you're going to be adding it to your product to create your yogurt. All right, so we have our yogurt, and I've already placed about a fourth a cup of yogurt into a measuring cup. And what we're going to do now, before our milk cools, because you want to be able to maintain a temperature, a fairly warm temperature of about 110 to 120 for your milk. So we're going to remove our thermometer. Now, we're going to take our yogurt starter. So this is our starter, and we have our warm milk, okay? We're going to take our yogurt and we're going to mix this into the warm milk. Now, because your milk is already warmed, you will notice that your yogurt will dissolve a bit easier, but you will have to give it a bit of a stir in order to get it mixed in well. And you may also get on top of your milk while you're waiting for it to cool. You may get a little bit of the whey that, not whey, but a little bit of the milk that starts to solidify on the top. That is perfectly okay. You can either remove that or you can just kind of mix it in. So now what we're going to do is we're going to mix in our active culture, which is our plain yogurt. We're not adding any additives today because I wanted to really keep this recipe very simple for the purposes of the demonstration. Now, we're using full fat milk today, whole milk, but you can also use 2% skim. You can use other, types of milk as we mentioned. Also, if you don't want to warm your milk in a saucepan, you can also warm it in a glass container like this in the microwave, as long as you're using your thermometer to be able to register the temperature of the milk. All right. So now we have our active culture mixed in well. And now what we're going to do is I have a clean and sanitized pint canning jar. I love canning jars. Of course, I teach canning classes, so I use a lot of canning jars, but I love canning jars, Ball in particular, because you can use when you purchase your Ball canning jars, those jars are freezer safe, dishwasher safe, and safe for canning. So you can get multiple uses out of one product. So we're going to take our yogurt mixture and we're going to pour this into our pint jar. Right. So now in this case, we had 12, and if there's a little yogurt left, you want to make sure that you get all of that because those cultures are really important. Now we use 12 ounces of milk today, 1/4 of a cup of yogurt. In this case, make sure we get all of that there. And we're going to mix this in. All right. Now, your next step is to begin your incubation process. Now, I have already began to incubate some yogurt off camera. So I am going to pull what I have already begun to incubate out of the oven for you so that you're able to see the setup that you'll need to create for the incubation process. All right. So let's see, let me grab my, so I'll kind of tilt the camera here a bit so you can see. So one of the things you'll notice here, and you can see it here on the camera, that I have a thermometer here. And this thermometer, oven thermometer, is reading at about, I'll say this is reading about 120 thereabout. Now, what we did is the oven is set to the lowest setting because you just want to keep the oven warm. You're not cooking the product, you're just keeping it warm. Now, we have our yogurt inside of a bit of a water bath. So I'm going to take this out so we can see. And you'll actually be able to see there's some, those cultures are really beginning to do their job. So now we have inside of this container, this is so awesome. I actually started this about an hour before our presentation because I wanted to demonstrate for you just how quickly the cultures can form yogurt. So what we have here is we have our pint jar, and that's a little one. Our pint jar down inside of just a metal bowl. And I have about a quarter of the ways inside of this bowl some water, you can see there. Now, the water that I placed inside of this bowl was just out of the tap, and it was warm water because you want the water around your jar to be about 110. And so let's see here. Let's take a look at how warm this water is, just to give you an example. All right. So while I'm waiting for that, because I believe in making a good use of your time. So I am going to take the camera and I'm going to show you what has happened just in about an hour and a half's time. So there we go. I'm going to wait for it to adjust because the lighting in here is good. Let's see if I can get it. All right, there we are. I'm going to try to hold it as still as possible. Look at this. I'm going to try to place it here so you can see. You'll see that the yogurt is not completely thickened, but you see there, really good example of that incubation process. I'm going to see if I can give you a different view. All right, there we are. See that? You see the texture there? So this is, I'm not going to put that back because I want to make sure we're not contaminating, even though that's clean. So this yogurt has already begun to incubate. Now, the recipe that we're using today recommends that, this water is reading at about 115, so that's perfect. Now, the recipe we're using today recommends that you incubate your product for about 6 to 8 hours. So we're going to place this back into the oven so we can continue the incubation process. And then I am going to do another setup for you so that you can see we're going to have 2 yogurts incubating at the same time. And also, like I said, this is the first time that we're doing a class in this way. So if you're enjoying this, if this is something that you feel could be useful for you and you like the online classes where you can kind of follow along at home, certainly let us know because we are really interested in reaching as many citizens as we can with the classes that we're teaching. Alrighty. So stand by for just a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare another water bath for us so we can get that into the oven so we can incubate the yogurt that we made today. All right, so I have our metal bowl here with water about a quarter of the way. The objective here with your active cultures and with your yogurt product is that you want the water to cover about half of the jar. And so keep in mind that if you put too much water, it'll cover the entire jar. And also, if you have a container that's larger or taller than your jar, you want to make sure there's not so much water that you get water into your actual yogurt. All right, so now we're going to take this, we're going to place it in the oven with our other yogurt that's already incubating. And then we are going to have 2 pints of homemade yogurt that we can use in a number of different ways. All righty. So there you have it. Quick, simple, easy way of making yogurt at home. Today we just made a plain yogurt. Now, what's going to happen in the incubation process is that the yogurt's going to continue to form, it's going to continue to thicken. And then in most cases, you're going to have what's called whey on that's going to float to the top. That's the liquid that you see that's typically on top of even like your store-bought yogurt. When you open it, there's little water on the top. That's whey. Now you can stir that in, you can choose to pour it off, or you can choose to strain it. You can use a cheesecloth and you can strain that liquid off. Now straining that liquid off will give you what's considered Greek yogurt, which is that nice, thick, creamy yogurt that we all like to use in different recipes. Now, a couple things that you can do is that you can use yogurt, as we talked about, in baking, but you can also use it as a sandwich spread or as something that can be a condiment for a crudité, you know, fruit, vegetable trays. If you're doing vegetable trays, you can add in fresh herbs that maybe have been muddled from your garden, or if you're doing it for a fruit tray, you can add in honey and other sweeteners, or even cocoa powder. So there are tons of different options that you can use for your yogurt that you made today. And so I am going to share my contact information. This indeed has been a pleasure for me to provide this first class to you all. And I am hopeful that our citizens will have an interest in doing more classes like this. So here's my contact information. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at the information there, or you can drop your questions in the chat box. I appreciate your time today. I hope that this information was useful. And if you signed up for this course, expect to receive a follow-up email from me. That follow-up email will ask you to complete an evaluation that helps us to enhance and increase the services that we provide to the community. And it will also include the handout with the recipes and the steps that we followed today for our class. I really appreciate your time today. I hope that you have a wonderful day and that you're staying cool and enjoying this weather that we're having. Have a wonderful day.